It's here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my final NBA mock draft. Hit that like and subscribe button. I'm going to show it to you guys. The asterisks are where potential trades could happen. We'll highlight those trades, but I'll show you the full mock on all of its glory. This is what it looks like. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger for you guys, because I know somebody's already complaining about like I'm not being like site friendly or something. But here we go, all of in its glory. This is what the first round looks. Well, that was the first round. Looks like this. This is what it looks like. Take a screenshot if you want to, and we're about to get right into it. That's what the first round looks like. Again, I'll show you one more time. Pause the video if you want to see it in its full. Now, second round looks like this to start. Pause the video if you want to. And then the rest of the second round looks like this. Alrighty, that's what you got. Let's get it. So, it's going to be interesting. I believe Atlanta will keep the number one pick. They're going to draft Zachary Rissache. He's a guy that, the way I view him, if we had to give him a comparison, he's kind of Harrison Barnes, Cam Johnson is what you're looking at. He fits perfect next to Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, Jalen Johnson, and Onyeka Okongwu. And it allows them to trade DeAndre Hunter. Obviously, next, Washington takes Alex Sarr. He's the guy everybody knows. Evan Mobley, Jaren Jackson Jr. type potential. Worst case scenario, he's like strong Miles Swift, which is like a role player. We got Reed Shepard, who I've said is like he's either like a smaller Kirk Heinrich. Some people are saying like the successor to Fred VanVleet, similar style player. I think worst case scenario, he's like Deuce McBride. And I agree, Kirk Heinrich, Fred VanVleet, good comparisons for his ceiling. Next up, Stephen Cancel. He's kind of has a chance to be like a longer version of Marcus Smart. He's a very good player. If the shot doesn't come around, or if it, I really think he's a very safe player, and I think worst case scenario, he's like a Dante DiVincenzo. Mateus Buzelis, his agent's father is like an executive for the Pistons, so expect him to be drafted 5th overall by the Pistons. Mateus Buzelis, I think he's like a Nicholas Batum worst case scenario. He's like a Marvin Williams type player. Then Charlotte, I expect them to trade with Memphis. And I expect it just to be this year's pick and then a lightly protected pick, or a pick, this year's pick, their 9th pick for the 6th pick. And they attach like maybe like Jake LaRavia, Santi Aldama, Zaire Williams, some combination of those players. Now, next up, you got yourself going Portland, who also is another team that I'm hearing could potentially trade. And there's a team that I think somebody could trade up to draft Cody Williams, because I think Portland really likes Dalton Connect, and I think Dalton Connect's going to be available closer to 10. So maybe a team like Utah trades up for the Portland pick, and they basically swap, so Utah can get themselves Cody Williams, and then Portland takes Dalton Connect 10. I see that being a potential trade. Next up, and Cody Williams is a guy that I kind of see him as a Jeremy Grant, best case scenario, Wesley Johnson type guy. Next up is Tijan Saloon, who I really like, but again, I think he's just a bouncier version of Wilson Chandler or Rui Hachimura, and he's perfect. They're going to bring a Frenchman onto the team to help out Victor Wembanyama, have another guy who he can speak French to. And next up, we got ourselves, and I think that's a good fit for San Antonio. We talked Memphis. If they do stay there, I do think Ron Holland fits them. He's a guy who brings up defense, even if he's not ready offensively. I just think his defense helps him be able to contribute. Now, 10, I do think it's going to be I think 9 and 10 are both going to be switches. So either way, if they were to stay, Utah takes Dalton Connect because they missed out on Cody Williams in this case. But I think Dalton Connect's like a Tim Hardaway Jr. type guy. And worst case scenario, if he isn't like Tim Hardaway Jr., maybe he's more of a Aaron Aflalo. And Ron Holland's like a Gerald Wallace or a Troy Brown Jr. is what I've said. Chicago, they get themselves Devin Carter, who could be like Derek White or Jose Alvarado. Then Oklahoma City, I think they're a team that could be potentially do a trade. That's just me. I haven't heard anything. The other guys, I have heard potential trade stuff from people. But if they stay there, Oklahoma City, I think they take Rob Dillingham, who I think is like a smaller Emmanuel Quickly. Best case scenario, worst case scenario, he's like Patty Mills. And I mean, again, I'd like to be wrong. I really would like to be wrong. So I hope I'm wrong. Now let's move on. Who Jared McCain is a guy that I've personally have compared him. I've had other people also say he's a Seth Curry type guy, really solid player. He fits what they need, gives them a 3-point shooting. If he's not Seth Curry, I think he's like a Landry Shamet guy, but basically just a 3-point shooter who can give you some stuff. Portland takes Tristan da Silva. I know people are gonna be like, wow, he's flying up. Some people are comparing him to Kyle Kuzma. I think that's being very generous calling him Kyle Kuzma. I think Tristan da Silva is more of like a nimbler Marcus Morris if it really worked out, but I think it's more of like a Georges Niang if like we're giving like comparisons, and this is why I'm just doing it just to kind of go through this, and we'll talk through each of these picks in a second once we get to what we just did. So let's retalk why we did all this. We already know Atlanta, Washington, Houston, San Antonio, and Detroit. Charlotte, we talked about the trade, and plus if they were to do the trade, they would get themselves a defender, and that's for Ron Holland. They would draft at 9, and then 10. I mean, at 6, it would be Memphis taking Donovan Clingan, which comes next to Jarrett Jackson. Right here, I think a team Utah trades up with Portland. They want Cody Williams. He fits what they potentially want, and Portland really likes Dalton Connect. He gives them like a solid guy who comes in day one and helps them a lot of move. But I also see both teams, if Portland wants to stay there, they take Cody Williams, and if the Utah stays there, Dalton Connect's perfect for them. Chicago, if Josh Giddey doesn't work out, you have Devin Carter, and if Josh Giddey does work out, you have Devin Carter, who can still be like a 6-man. And Jared McCain, they need 3-point. Rob Dillingham gives you an offensive player for OKC. They could maybe trade that and trade back and just get a different player. I could also see him taking a guy like Keyshawn George there. Jared McCain is like a 3-point shooter. Just give Sacramento what they need, some scoring off the bench. And then Tristan da Silva, they need front court help. And I think if Tejan Saloon's there, they would take him, but he's the best power forward. Nikola Topic, he falls to Miami, and he's like a Goran Dragic guy, and he has a torn ACL. He might be available next year, or he redshirts next year, or he sits overseas next year. We don't know. But I think Miami, especially with him being like a Goran Dragic guy, they've had this like affinity for foreign players as of late, and it's lucked out for them. So I think they take him, especially with him falling down there. Philadelphia takes Jacoby Walter. Jacoby Walter's a guy people are comparing like to KCP. I think it's like a smaller Al Burks. And I think he works out for a team like Philadelphia, gives you some, a role player off the bench. Lakers take the next coming of not Carlton Carrington, the next Clint Capella and Yves Messi. It's just perfect for me, I think, right there. Carlton Carrington's a guy who might be a 1, might be a 2, might be a 3. Some people see Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I see a little bit of Karis LeVert. Depends, eye of beholder, but he fits Orlando because he's a multi-positional player, plays defense, is an offensive guy, will allow them to move off of one of their guards if they need to. Toronto takes the big boy, Zach Edey, who I've said it before. He's a guy who's either going to be like Boban Marjanovic, maybe an Alex Lynn, but a good, solid rotational big. Then you have yourself Keyshawn George, who's an enigma. He could be like Kyle Anderson with a little bit more athleticism and a 3-point shot, or he could be like Delano Banton. It's incredible. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what. All right, and he's a guy that I think fits what Cleveland's looking there at that point. New Orleans takes Khalil Ware, who I've said it before. Khalil Ware could either be like Jared Allen with a 3-point shot, or he's Willie Cauley-Stein with a 3-point shot. But I think he's also a guy who could be the Derek Lively of this draft class. So keep an eye out on him. And then everyone's saying Tyler Kolek with Phoenix. He's kind of like a George Hill, Monte Morris type guy. They need somebody. They could also trade back and be like, hey, let's trade with a team like Indiana that has several second-round picks. We'll get multiple assets, take off their picks. We'll get cheaper contracts, help build this team up. Now, Milwaukee, they need someone to help them win right now. They bring in Ryan Dunn, who's like a longer guy, Isaac Okoro, Andre Roberson type guy. Gives them some defense, which they need, and he'll be able to play right now, kind of be an offensive slasher, transition guy. Maybe the shot falls this season. Who knows? I expect New York to trade one of their picks, but Tyler Smith, who's kind of like a John Collins, Channing Frye mixed. He's a front court player. I think he fits, long term for New York, especially being a cheap player off the bench, but he is more of a project. While Baylor Shireman, if they do keep the pick, he is a guy who can come in. And Baylor Shireman, in my opinion, he has shown that he can be kind of an offensive guy. Worst case scenario is Svi Mikhaili, but I think he's kind of like a Justin Holiday. And Tom Thibodeau really appreciates guys like that. Isaiah Collier, I don't even know what he is, but I feel like he's going to free fall in the draft, and a team like Washington is just going to be licking their chops at having a guy like there because he's so late in the draft that it's like, okay, if he works out, he could be like a really good player. If he doesn't, who cares? Johnny Furphy, I think, is either like a longer Grayson Allen or like a Simone Fontecchio. I think he'd be a really good player. But I just think he's a little raw and he's going to take some time. Minnesota likes those guys. Chris Finch is going to coach him up, and I think it's perfect. Denver brings Kyle Filipowski in, which will allow them to trade Zeke Nnaji. And I think Kyle Filipowski, I've compared him to be a bigger Naz Reid. Some people say Kelly Olynyk, but I think he's a really safe option. Utah's going to take a flyer on Pacom Dadit. Some people are saying Tobias Harris 2.0. I'm saying a skinnier Mirza Teletovic. But I think you'd be someone who can help them out really good. And they're at an opportunity to, like the Wizards with Isaiah Collier, just to take a flyer on a guy with a lot of potential. Boston takes DeRon Holmes as they need some backup big depth. Dude, he's like Nick Claxton with a jump shot. Worst case scenario is Zeke Nnaji. Now we're going to run through the second round a little bit quicker. Toronto takes Jalen Tyson because he's good, kind of like poor man's Josh Hart. Utah takes another project in Bobby Klintman. Milwaukee brings in a win now guy, Terrence Shannon, who is not guilty. Then San Antonio I have Dylan Jones and Kevin McCullough both listed there. And that's embarrassing because I'm pretty sure I have Kevin McCullough go somewhere else. So this is supposed to be just Dylan Jones. Ignore Kevin McCullough. Then Indiana takes Nikola Jurisic, and he's going to be stashed. I don't think he's going to come over this season. Then A.J. Johnson to Minnesota. Now let's go over here to the end of the draft, and we got ourselves A.J. Mitchell to New York. He just screams a New York pick. Memphis takes Jonathan Magbo, who just is another guy who just is kind of like a Memphis pick. Adembona goes to Portland, a little bit of a project, but they like him. Philly takes Pele Larson, who could be a guy who helps him out right now. Charlotte takes Justin Edwards, who's a 3-and-D guy, went to Duke, nearby guy. Miami takes the defensive guy in Jamal Sheed. Houston takes up Melvin Ajinça, who's kind of like a Amir Coffee type guy. Sacramento gets more shooting, Jalen Wells. LA Clippers take the Black Joe Ingles and Harrison Ingram. Orlando takes another guard in KJ Simpson, who they can throw on a two-way. Trent Flowers is a guy who can go to San Antonio, who they could stash on overseas. Enrique Freeman goes to Indiana, who they love. If the Indiana keeps their pick, Cam Spencer goes there. Washington takes Tristan Newton to bring a guy who has some winning experience. Jalen Bridges goes to Golden State as he's an older prospect that they'll like. Keyshawn Johnson gives them a multi-positional front court player who's a really good rebounder. Boston gets a sniper in Antonio Reeves. Bronny James, of course, goes to the Lakers. And then Anton Watson is another front court player with three-point shooting ability to go to Denver. Memphis takes the thick boy in Blake Henson out of Pittsburgh. And then Dallas brings in a backup for Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford and Jesse Edwards. So that was it. That's the second round, ladies and gentlemen. As you guys saw, I hope you guys did enjoy. Let me hear your opinions down below. What do you guys expect to happen? That's going to be it for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. It was a good mock. It was a good draft cycle. We got a lot of content out, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be at the NBA draft, getting a bunch of footage, getting interviews. So if you guys do truly enjoy or have stuff that you guys want to do or want to see, let me know. But that's it. Bye.